I know. I've missed the last 2 weeks in a row. In my defense, it's because I'm lazy and really bad at following through with things. Also, I went on a cruise. This episode of my midlife crisis is going to be podcast format. You know, voice on top of video and images, that sort of thing. The reason is because I learned something really important during the cruise. I'm really bad at this content creation gig. I have some thoughts on that, but I'll save them until after I'm done talking about the cruise. The other thing I learned, or more so reinforced what I already knew, is that mid-sized groups of dorks, nerds, and geeks hanging out in a small enclosed setting makes for an amazing event. I've been to mid-sized cons before once or twice. I'm not an expert or anything, but I really do love how you get that community atmosphere with groups like this. When you put a bunch of nerds in one box, they make their own fun. Which brings us nicely to Comic-Con The Cruise, Volume 2. Thoughts. The best part about this cruise, in my honest opinion, was the people attending. A great example, Michelle and I weren't the only ones hiding stuff around the ship, nor were we the only take one leave one door. I don't even know if we had the coolest stuff on our door or that we were hiding around the ship. Definitely top 3 though. But between the treasure hunts, amazing cosplay, and all-around fun interactions, it's really the community that makes something like Comic-Con The Cruise worth attending. The weather endeavored to keep things interesting. Instead of porting at Nassau, we instead had to switch to Cozumel because of high winds inside of the Bahamas. It did keep the boat very, very rocky on the first day of travel. However, considering Cozumel to me is a better port, this was a worthwhile trade. We didn't really do that much in Cozumel, however, we got off the boat, stretched our legs, and had a wonderful brunch. As for the cruise itself, I'd say it was a great trip, but there are definitely some areas that could have been improved. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get a Comic-Con Cruise Volume 3, but if we did, here would be my recommendations for improvement. The big elephant in the room is that Comic-Con The Cruise didn't draw enough people to make it sustainable. And I think that this happened because if you look at all the other themed cruises, those grew organically over time. Comic-Con thought that they could use the name Comic-Con and that would just immediately draw enough people. But they didn't actually put enough advertising, so not enough people even know that this exists. And although you have hundreds of thousands of people attending Comic-Cons every single year, that doesn't necessarily translate to immediate success for something like a cruise, because not everybody that attends a land-based show is going to want to go on a boat for several days. But there are proven successes in this area, see Star Trek The Cruise and multiple other themed events, so you know it has to be possible to draw that number of people. Well, if you're starting a new themed cruise, then I really think that the difference between make or break is putting enough advertising behind it. Getting big name YouTubers to put it out to their crowd of people and gather them in so that you can start to build that core audience. And once you have that core audience, you can tone down on the amount of marketing. But for the first few years, I think the advertising spend has to be high enough to draw enough people that can actually become sustainable. And the unfortunate thing is, it seems like for Volume 2, because there weren't enough people in attendance, the main shows really suffered. 2 of the nights, instead of putting the main headliner talent on the stage, they instead had a comedian and a magician. Nobody's coming to Comic-Con for a comedian and a magician. They're coming for the talent. They're coming for Billy Boyd. They're coming for Alex Kingston. They're coming for Jason Isaacs. They're coming for Arthur DeVille. It just makes it really incongruous when the main show doesn't actually showcase Comic-Con style talent. My final gripe is more of a skill issue on my part, but I really do wish that more venues would put the names of all of the performers of every panel on the pamphlets so that you can know who's attending what panel and so you can prioritize appropriately. Okay, I'm done complaining now. Now on to the stuff that I really loved about the cruise. Despite my few criticisms, Michelle and I walked away from this year saying that we genuinely enjoyed it even more than Volume 1. As mentioned earlier, the number one reason why we loved it more this year is really the community. And a large part of that was the amazing cosplay on display across the ship at all hours every day. I really can't say this enough, but every person who showed up and cosplayed, you made our trip, you're all amazing. but I'm going to call out a couple of the ones that I particularly loved and remembered, starting with every single person who cosplayed as Carl. I do apologize for missing the meetup that I tried to put together. In my defense, I put it together while drunk, and drunk Fred can't be trusted. Also, to the couples cosplay male and female V, that was amazing. Your costumes were 10 out of 10. Absolutely spectacular. To the guy walking around as Pee Wee Herman, you can't convince me that that was a costume. You are actually Pee Wee Herman. The Minion Army showed up again for Volume 2 as they did for Volume 1, and it was equally as hilarious this year. Cutie Pie Sensei, Yaya Han, and Cowbutt Crunchies, all of your costumes were amazing, but I will say Cowbutt Crunchies takes the lot with Lord of the Rings Pool Party, including an inflatable One Ring. There was also one cosplayer that I ran into on board. She was also hiding things, and she was like, "I saw your video!" So we chatted and traded the things that we were hiding around the ship, and she said that hers was a hint to her future cosplay for cosplay night. It was a little tiny unicorn, and I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. Boy, am I an idiot, and did I eat those words, because when I saw her on cosplay night walk out as corrupted Princess Lily, it hit me like a ton of bricks. All I can say is what an absolute legend. Two more that hit pretty hard. Someone was walking around as one of the Black Hand Assassins, and they were handing out papers that had the Black Hand print and the words, "We know what you did," written on it. The last one that hit pretty hard was someone dressed as Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin, just smoking a stogie at the railing overlooking the dance party on cosplay night. It was one of the most movie-like moments that I had during the entire cruise. I also want to give special note to the purple-suited Heath Ledger Joker. He brought the insanity of that character to his behavior the entire night. Every time I saw him, he was in character. It was very impressive. Quite a memorable performance. Then, of course, my last notable cosplay, all I'm going to say is praise the sun. I really could just keep listing memorable cosplays, but if I did, this video would end up being an hour long, and my editor would either kill me or himself. I don't know. So moving on to some other highlights of the trip. One particular one was whiskey tasting with Billy Boyd. I really do wish that they didn't have crew members try to give an actual whiskey tasting anything. None of us were there for that. In fact, most of the people in line were talking about how they don't even drink whiskey. Everybody was there to just hear Billy Boyd talk for an hour. So he could have gone on about how whiskey is made from sticking alcohol in barrels, and then Scottish magic happens, and then you get whiskey. No one would have been displeased with that result at all. Also, the classes by Yaya Han and Cowbutt Crunchies were absolutely fantastic. They were very informative, particularly the leather crafting one by Cowbutt Crunchies. That's going to be very useful for future cosplays. I will say, DJ Miss Ninja, you absolutely killed it. The Guardians were also great, but I didn't really get to many of their events. However, my knee still isn't right from partying so hard at the cosplay after party. It was also really fun getting to talk camera gear with all of the people who were officially taking photo and video for the cruise. It's really fun to get to talk gear with people who know what they're doing, because I certainly don't. I was also lucky enough to get a Doug hug. A sad admission, I totally mistook Doug for a different actor. However, if I had paid attention to the pre-read material, which who reads? I probably would have been fanboying a lot harder when I saw him, because he's Abe from Hellboy and the Angel of Death from Hellboy 2, as well as the Chamberlain from Hellboy 2. And he's also the Pale Man from Pan's Labyrinth. So many amazing roles. No wonder I didn't recognize him, though, because all of those roles are extremely makeup heavy. But I do realize that I lose all of my nerd cred for that. But aside from all of that, the biggest highlight of the trip was completing another wonderful adventure with my wife. I do have a few regrets. I'm really sad that I didn't get to more Doctor Who events. I really like both River and Rory as characters, and I only really saw them at maybe 2 different events. But again, skill issue on my part. I also really wanted to give one of the mushroom magnets to Billy Boyd. I had this thing built up in my head where I'd open the box that I was using to hold all of them as I hid them around the ship, and he'd look at them and go, "Mushrooms!" But that's, you build up stuff like that in your head, and it's not really important whether or not it happens. It just never really seemed the right time to go up to him. And I do have a little FOMO as far as a couple of the events that I heard about afterwards that I didn't actually attend, but that's going to be every single thing like this that you attend. You're never going to be able to make it to every single panel, so realistically, I'm not that sad about missing anything because it was still a great con. So final thoughts. Would I do it again? Probably. The community alone is worth it, and we had a great time. But my biggest takeaway is this is the first time that I've actually experienced the feeling of, do I really want to do this content creation thing? Lugging around the camera was a lot, and fiddling with the settings, I was surprised how bad I was at content creation, capturing moments, looking for the right scenes, and making sure to pay attention to capture things. There was also moments where I would sit at an event and have to figure out, did I want to be at this event to be entertained, or did I need to be in content capture mode? And so it really changed the way that I felt that I was engaging with the con as a whole. But that's kind of what this year is for. Not only is it so that I can suck at this, consistently for a year and maybe hopefully improve at using all of my equipment, but it's also so that I can learn whether or not this is truly for me. And this event, it was more of a no than it was a yes, but a large part of that was because I went into it with no plan. So I think in the future, on my next trip, I need to do a lot more pre-planning of how I want to capture things, because realistically, this style of video is really a salvaging operation more than anything. In the future, I need to go in and I need to take more videos across the board. Way fewer pictures. I had 4,000, well, just under 4,000 raw images. I also need to change my camera so that it captures both RAW and JPEG, so that I don't have to worry about afterwards converting 3,800 photos over from RAW to JPEG. I also need to get more comfortable with my camera equipment and learn to pull better focus. A lot of the photos were using autofocus, and they would be focusing on someone in the background, so I would completely miss the subject, and the photo's basically ruined. So I really just have to realize that I can't be more run and gun style. I have to be more intentional about this content creation thing if I want it to actually come out good. I also need to figure out what shots and clips that I need to take before I go on the trip and have some sort of plan so that going into it, I know, okay, I want to get this sort of shot. I want to tell this sort of story. Here's the arc of everything. Because going into it without a plan means that I'm just trying to salvage what I can out of content after I get back. Whereas if I go in with an idea of what I want the story to be, then I can do better at making sure that I actually capture those moments so that I can tell that story. So that's going to mean a lot more storyboarding, a lot more outlines, and a lot more intent before trips, not after trips. And the most important thing that I learned is that Drunk Fred is an awful photographer. Nearly 4,000 pictures I took, and I'd say less than 300 of them are usable. 10 of them are actually good. Sober Fred's not much better. So, for those of you who stuck around to the end, I've got some shameless engagement farming for you. I failed to put out a video last week. In fact, I failed to put a video out technically the last 3 weeks, though I'm not counting this week because federal holiday means that I can extend Sunday into Monday. That's federal law. Now, I'm not worried about the first week that I missed because I was on the cruise, and before the cruise, I was getting ready for the cruise. So I'm not going to beat myself up over missing a video when life stuff happens. I don't want this New Year's resolution of trying to put out a video every week to get in the way of me living life. However, if I miss a video entirely because I procrastinate and then I don't put in the work, and I could have actually put out a video, well, this is where the question comes in. So, I have to ask, 10 subscribers? When did I get 10 subscribers? I have to do a 10 subscriber milestone video. Okay, well, to my 10 subscribers, should I have punishments if I do not put out a video due solely to my own laziness? And then the second question is, should that punishment be retroactive, meaning that I would already owe one punishment video? The format of these would be in the form of a video that I put out that's in a punishment format. I will run a poll beforehand. I will be choosing the options. I know several of my friends are in the audience, and I do not trust them. So instead, it would be in the format of, say, 4 options like one chip challenge, ice bucket challenge, I do my next video from inside the cold plunge, something like that. And then you would choose the punishment, and then my next video or a video or 2 afterwards, depending on upload schedule, that video would be a punishment video. Think it over, answer in the comments below, drive that engagement. Also, like and subscribe or whatever.